Hey, movie nerds! Today, we're stepping into Return of the Jedi, a 1983 space fantasy epic that explores the collision of redemption and temptation, a story that asks us to look deeper, to question, and to feel beyond the surface. I'm glad you're here, because together we'll unravel the hidden layers, the subtle details, and the little moments that whisper the heart of the film. If you haven't yet, go ahead and subscribe. Let's keep exploring these stories that shape how we see the world. Now, settle in, open your mind, and let's dive into the depths of this cinematic journey. The story begins with a tension that feels both familiar and foreign, like returning to a place you've known all your life only to find it's been transformed in your absence. The rebellion is still alive, battered but unbroken, and the Empire, relentless and insidious, has begun construction on something even more terrifying than before. Floating in the cold vacuum of space, a new battle station looms, its skeleton half-finished yet already casting shadows across the galaxy. It is a symbol not just of military might but of persistence, the Empire rising again from what was thought to be its demise. Around it, the hum of starfighters and the thrum of Imperial discipline set the stage for a confrontation that feels inevitable, the kind of clash that can no longer be postponed. But before battles among the stars, the story takes us somewhere stranger, more dangerous, and almost grotesquely alive, the palace of a crime lord. It is here that our heroes must begin their journey, sneaking into a den of vice and laughter where every corner hides something grotesque or ridiculous. The creature comforts of this palace are built on the misery of others, dancers forced to entertain, prisoners dragged into darkness, and a monstrous slug who lounges in arrogance, surrounded by sycophants. One by one, our heroes infiltrate this place. The princess comes in disguise, the droids barter themselves as gifts, the towering companion finds himself imprisoned, and finally, the young Jedi himself arrives, cloaked not only in black but in confidence that seems both reassuring and unnerving. This sequence serves as more than a rescue mission. It is a statement of growth, of how far these characters have come since their first fumbling steps into rebellion. The young Jedi, once a farm boy uncertain of his path, now strides into danger with calm assurance, his words measured, his power under control, at least on the surface. Yet beneath that composure lies something darker, something that whispers of arrogance and temptation. His entrance into the palace, his attempt at negotiation, even his use of force, all hint at the fine line he now walks between light and shadow. When the moment of reckoning arrives, it does not come in shadows but in sunlight. The heroes are dragged into the desert, cast before the hungry maw of a creature buried in sand, a living pit with tentacles that twitch in anticipation. The crime lord revels in their doom, his laughter booming as his prisoners stand on the brink of being devoured. But here, in the blazing heat, the tide turns. The young Jedi's green blade flares to life for the first time, dazzling against the desert sun. Chains snap, blasters fire, and chaos erupts as the rebels turn execution into victory. The princess strangles her captor with the very chains he once used to enslave her, the smuggler stumbles back into freedom, and the crime lord falls into the jaws of his own beast. The desert battle is both thrilling spectacle and symbolic liberation, a purge of shadows before the true darkness ahead. From the heat of sand to the chill of metal, the story shifts to the Empire's new weapon. The skeletal battle station, under construction yet already formidable, looms over the rebellion as a constant reminder that their fight is far from over. But it is not only machines that menace the galaxy. It is the presence within the Imperial throne room, a man cloaked in shadows, his voice a whisper of poison. The Emperor, until now only a distant figure, emerges in full. He embodies corruption not as rage but as patience, his power drawn not from brute force but from manipulation. Where Vader once inspired terror through breath and blade, the Emperor terrifies with words, with the ease with which he twists hope into despair. His presence becomes the gravitational pull of the story, dragging every character toward the final confrontation. And yet, not all battles are fought in darkness. On a forest moon cloaked in green, life thrives in simplicity. Towering trees stretch toward the sky, their trunks ancient and silent. Hidden among them are creatures underestimated by all, the Ewoks. To the Empire, they are insignificant, to the rebellion, an unexpected ally. The moon becomes a battleground where technology clashes with nature, where armored walkers stomp against wooden traps, and where the underestimated rise to strike down the mighty. Symbolically, this forest is the heart of the film's theme of balance. The small, the natural, the overlooked rising against the mechanical, the powerful, the arrogant. But it is in the throne room that the story finds its true core. The young Jedi confronts not only the Empire but his own blood. Vader, towering and relentless, is no longer merely an enemy. He is father. Their duel is not only physical but spiritual, every clash of blades echoing with questions of identity and choice. The Emperor watches, his voice dripping with satisfaction as he stokes anger, urging the boy to strike, to give in, to claim power. Each frame of this confrontation is heavy with symbolism. The boy bathed in light, the father cloaked in shadow, the Emperor's throne at the center as a spider's web. The duel crescendos in fury. The young Jedi lashes out, anger coursing through his strikes, his blade hammering against Vader's defenses. For a moment, he teeters on the brink, temptation nearly consuming him. And then, in silence, he looks down at his mechanical hand, sees the reflection of his own possible future in his father's severed stump, and makes his choice. He casts aside his weapon, declaring himself a Jedi not by victory but by refusal to kill. It is here that the true triumph lies, not in destruction, but in restraint, in defiance of temptation. Yet the story does not let us leave without sacrifice. The Emperor, denied his prize, unleashes his fury. Lightning arcs from his fingers, searing, relentless, drowning the young Jedi in agony. It is Vader, silent until now, who moves. He turns not as enforcer but as father, seizing the Emperor and casting him into the abyss. The act is both murder and redemption, a final choice that restores the man within the machine. But the cost is fatal. As the battle station burns, Vader breathes his last, his mask removed, his face revealed not as monster but as man, scarred, weary, yet finally at peace. Its vast corridors hum with construction, but at its core lies something far more chilling than weaponry. The Emperor himself arrives, cloaked in darkness, his voice a serpent's hiss as he assures his enforcer that all is proceeding as he has foreseen. His presence is not rage but calm inevitability, the confidence of a man who believes he has already won. The new weapon is not only military but psychological, a reminder that rebellion can be crushed not only with firepower but with despair. The rebellion, however, is not idle. In hidden chambers and command ships, leaders gather, their voices urgent. Scouts have uncovered the weapon's location, and plans form to strike before its completion. Yet the task is monumental. The battle station is protected by shields generated from the forest moon below. If those shields are not destroyed, any attack will fail. Volunteers are called, missions assigned, and our heroes find themselves once again at the heart of the fight. But before fleets can be mustered, another journey calls. The young Jedi returns to the swamp where he once stumbled through training, seeking the small, cryptic master who first showed him the path. Time has passed, and the master's body has withered. His words come with effort, his eyelids heavy, his presence fading. He confirms what the boy had suspected, that the dark enforcer is indeed his father. And with that revelation comes another. There is another Skywalker, another hope. The master's words drift into silence as he slips into the Force, his body dissolving, leaving only absence. For the young Jedi, this is both closure and burden, knowledge that deepens his resolve but also his dread. His destiny is no longer a question, it is a path he cannot escape. The smuggler, meanwhile, has resumed his roguish charm, though softened by loyalty. Once ready to flee from causes greater than himself, he now stands firmly within the rebellion, not out of ideology but out of love and connection. His bond with the princess has grown, their affection no longer hidden in sarcasm but revealed in glances, in quiet words. The towering companion stands beside him, ever faithful, while the droids continue their banter, their humor a counterpoint to the gravity around them. This group, fractured and tested, is together once more. Their mission takes them to the forest moon, where towering trees reach into the sky, their roots ancient and tangled, their canopy alive with birdsong. Yet beneath this beauty lies danger. The Empire patrols here, vigilant, their technology clashing against the serenity of nature. The hero's arrival sparks skirmishes, speeders roaring through the trees at breakneck speed, blasters firing in flashes of red. It is a chase both exhilarating and perilous, trunks rushing past like walls, branches whipping by as machines scream through a living forest. It is here, amid these trees, that the unexpected allies emerge. Small, furry creatures with primitive tools and wide, curious eyes stumble upon the rebels. To the Empire, they are insignificant. To the rebellion, they become something else entirely. These beings, underestimated and dismissed, will prove pivotal. Their innocence hides resilience, their simplicity conceals ingenuity. In the balance between nature and machine, The forest moon becomes the stage where the underestimated rise against the powerful. As the mission deepens, so too does the tension within the young Jedi. He confides in the princess, revealing the truth of his blood, that the Dark Enforcer is his father. Her eyes widen in shock, her heart heavy with the knowledge. And then he reveals more, that she, too, carries the same blood, that she is his sister, hidden away, her identity veiled until now. The revelation binds them together, but also weighs heavily, for it means that she, too, is entwined in destiny's web. The Empire, however, is not blind. Traps are already laid, patience already set into motion by the Emperor's careful design. What the rebellion believes to be strategy may yet prove to be manipulation. The forest, the shield, the battle station, all of it has been foreseen. And though the heroes march forward with courage, the shadow of inevitability hangs above them, whispering that even victory may serve the enemy's greater plan. Thus the stage is set. The desert has burned away chains, the swamp has spoken of destiny, the forest hides both allies and enemies, and above it all looms the skeleton of steel, waiting for its final confrontation. The heroes have grown, their bonds tested and reforged, yet the darkness ahead promises revelations that will cut deeper than any blade. Every step feels both triumph and trap, every victory a question mark. The rebellion is ready to strike, but so too is the Empire, and in the shadows, a father and son are destined to meet, not only in battle but in truth. The forest moon breathes with anticipation, the towering trees whispering as if they too know that destiny is converging here. The rebels, believing they hold the element of surprise, prepare to strike at the shield generator hidden within the dense woods. Their mission is clear: without lowering the defenses, the fleet waiting in space will be unable to touch the skeletal battle station looming above. Yet beneath their determination lies unease, a sense that the Empire has already anticipated their every move. The young Jedi feels it most keenly. His heart is no longer steady, it is a storm of conflict. In quiet moments, he turns away from the others, sensing the presence that haunts him. His father is near. Vader's shadow presses against his spirit, whispering temptation, reminding him that blood ties cannot be severed by resolve alone. When the rebels set their camp among their newfound allies, the Ewoks, he withdraws to confide in his sister. The revelation of their bond has left her shaken, but he offers her truth gently, his words carrying both warning and love. He tells her that she too has the same power, the same heritage, that the blood of Skywalker runs through her veins. Her reaction is silent, grief and acceptance mingling as she realizes what this means for them both. And then, before dawn, he leaves. He cannot stay with them, not when his father calls. Surrendering himself to Imperial patrols, he is taken in chains to the looming figure of Vader. Their reunion is cold, cloaked in silence broken only by the rasp of mechanical breath. The son speaks of conflict within his father, insisting that there is still good buried beneath the armor, that redemption is not impossible. Vader, however, denies it, his words resigned, his tone echoing years of servitude and self-loathing. Yet for a flicker, there is hesitation, a pause in his voice that suggests the son's belief is not entirely misplaced. Together they ascend to the throne room, where a greater shadow awaits. The Emperor greets them with the calm of inevitability. Draped in black, his face etched with corruption, he speaks not with rage but with condescension. To him, the duel is already decided, the rebellion already defeated, the young Jedi already his. The throne room itself reflects his power, a cavernous space dominated by windows through which the battle station and the stars loom. It is not only a chamber of rule but a stage for temptation, its every corner designed to draw the boy closer to despair. The Emperor reveals his trap with relish. The rebels on the forest moon are walking into an ambush, the fleet in space flying into annihilation. Their hope, he claims, will die before their eyes, leaving them with nothing but the lure of power. Its vast corridors hum with construction, but at its core lies something far more chilling than weaponry. The Emperor himself arrives, cloaked in darkness, his voice a serpent's hiss as he assures his enforcer that all is proceeding as he has foreseen. His presence is not rage but calm inevitability, the confidence of a man who believes he has already won. The new weapon is not only military but psychological, a reminder that rebellion can be crushed not only with firepower but with despair. The rebellion, however, is not idle. In hidden chambers and command ships, leaders gather, their voices urgent. Scouts have uncovered the weapon's location, and plans form to strike before its completion. Yet the task is monumental. The battle station is protected by shields generated from the forest moon below. If those shields are not destroyed, any attack will fail. Volunteers are called, missions assigned, and our heroes find themselves once again at the heart of the fight. But before fleets can be mustered, another journey calls. The young Jedi returns to the swamp where he once stumbled through training, seeking the small, cryptic master who first showed him the path. Time has passed, and the master's body has withered. His words come with effort, his eyelids heavy, his presence fading. He confirms what the boy had suspected, that the Dark Enforcer is indeed his father. And with that revelation comes another. There is another Skywalker, another hope. The master's words drift into silence as he slips into the Force, his body dissolving, leaving only absence. For the young Jedi, this is both closure and burden, knowledge that deepens his resolve but also his dread. His destiny is no longer a question, it is a path he cannot escape. The smuggler, meanwhile, has resumed his roguish charm, though softened by loyalty. Once ready to flee from causes greater than himself, he now stands firmly within the rebellion, not out of ideology but out of love and connection. His bond with the princess has grown, their affection no longer hidden in sarcasm but revealed in glances, in quiet words. The towering companion stands beside him, ever faithful, while the droids continue their banter, their humor a counterpoint to the gravity around them. This group, fractured and tested, is together once more. Their mission takes them to the forest moon, where towering trees reach into the sky, their roots ancient and tangled, their canopy alive with birdsong. Yet beneath this beauty lies danger. The Empire patrols here, vigilant, their technology clashing against the serenity of nature. The heroes' arrival sparks skirmishes, speeders roaring through the trees at breakneck speed, blasters firing in flashes of red. It is a chase both exhilarating and perilous, trunks rushing past like walls, branches whipping by as machines scream through a living forest. It is here, amid these trees, that the unexpected allies emerge. Small, furry creatures with primitive tools and wide, curious eyes stumble upon the rebels. To the Empire, they are insignificant. To the rebellion, they become something else entirely. These beings, underestimated and dismissed, will prove pivotal. Their innocence hides resilience, their simplicity conceals ingenuity. In the balance between nature and machine, the forest moon becomes the stage where the underestimated rise against the powerful. As the mission deepens, so too does the tension within the young Jedi. He confides in the princess, revealing the truth of his blood, that the Dark Enforcer is his father. Her eyes widen in shock, her heart heavy with the knowledge. And then he reveals more, that she, too, carries the same blood, that she is his sister, hidden away, her identity veiled until now. The revelation binds them together, but also weighs heavily, for it means that she, too, is entwined in destiny's web. The Empire, however, is not blind. Traps are already laid, patience already set into motion by the Emperor's careful design. What the rebellion believes to be strategy may yet prove to be manipulation. The forest, the shield, the battle station, all of it has been foreseen. And though the heroes march forward with courage, the shadow of inevitability hangs above them, whispering that even victory may serve the enemy's greater plan. Thus the stage is set. The desert has burned away chains, the swamp has spoken of destiny, the forest hides both allies and enemies, and above it all looms the skeleton of steel, waiting for its final confrontation. The heroes have grown, their bonds tested and reforged, yet the darkness ahead promises revelations that will cut deeper than any blade. Every step feels both triumph and trap, every victory a question mark. The rebellion is ready to strike, but so too is the Empire, and in the shadows, a father and son are destined to meet, not only in battle but in truth. The forest moon breathes with anticipation, the towering trees whispering as if they too know that destiny is converging here. The rebels, believing they hold the element of surprise, prepare to strike at the shield generator hidden within the dense woods. Their mission is clear: without lowering the defenses, the fleet waiting in space will be unable to touch the skeletal battle station looming above. Yet beneath their determination lies unease, a sense that the Empire has already anticipated their every move. The young Jedi feels it most keenly. His heart is no longer steady, it is a storm of conflict. In quiet moments, he turns away from the others, sensing the presence that haunts him. His father is near. Vader's shadow presses against his spirit, whispering temptation, reminding him that blood ties cannot be severed by resolve alone. When the rebels set their camp among their newfound allies, the Ewoks, he withdraws to confide in his sister. The revelation of their bond has left her shaken, but he offers her truth gently, his words carrying both warning and love. He tells her that she too has the same power, the same heritage, that the blood of Skywalker runs through her veins. Her reaction is silent, grief and acceptance mingling as she realizes what this means for them both. And then, before dawn, he leaves. He cannot stay with them, not when his father calls. Surrendering himself to Imperial patrols, he is taken in chains to the looming figure of Vader. Their reunion is cold, cloaked in silence broken only by the rasp of mechanical breath. The son speaks of conflict within his father, insisting that there is still good buried beneath the armor, that redemption is not impossible. Vader, however, denies it, his words resigned, his tone echoing years of servitude and self-loathing. Yet for a flicker, there is hesitation, a pause in his voice that suggests the son's belief is not entirely misplaced. Together they ascend to the throne room, where a greater shadow awaits. The Emperor greets them with the calm of inevitability. Draped in black, his face etched with corruption, he speaks not with rage but with condescension. To him, the duel is already decided, the rebellion already defeated, the young Jedi already his. The throne room itself reflects his power, a cavernous space dominated by windows through which the battle station and the stars loom. It is not only a chamber of rule but a stage for temptation, its every corner designed to draw the boy closer to despair. The Emperor reveals his trap with relish. The rebels on the forest moon are walking into an ambush, the fleet in space flying into annihilation. Their hope, he claims, will die before their eyes, leaving them with nothing but the lure of power. On the moon below, the trap springs. The rebels breach the shield bunker only to be surrounded by stormtroopers in overwhelming numbers. Blasters fire, chaos erupts, and their small force is captured. For a moment, it seems the rebellion will die not in glorious battle but in humiliation. But the forest has its own defenders. The Ewoks, underestimated as primitive, emerge in waves, hurling stones, swinging slings, launching traps set with vines and logs. Against the Empire's machines, their weapons seem laughable, until they work. Walkers are crushed between rolling logs, troopers are ensnared in nets, and chaos spreads through the Imperial ranks. The forest itself seems to rebel, its life rising to strike down the arrogance of technology. Above, the fleet arrives, its starfighters swooping toward the battle station, only to find the shields still in place. Suddenly, Imperial forces descend upon them, larger and more coordinated than expected. Dogfights light the stars, capital ships exchange fire, and for the first time the rebels realize they are not hunters but prey. The admiral in command steadies his forces, urging them to endure, to hold out until the shield falls. Every moment is agony, every second a reminder that the Empire has laid its trap with perfection. Back in the throne room, the Emperor lays out this despair before the young Jedi like a banquet. He goads him, urging him to strike, to unleash his anger, to seize control and end the suffering of his friends. The boy resists, his jaw tight, his hands trembling. But when the Emperor mocks him, when he threatens his sister with corruption, something snaps. The boy lunges, igniting his blade, striking at the man who taunts him. But his blade never reaches its target, for Vader intercepts him, their weapons clashing with a scream of energy. The duel begins, not as a test but as a storm. It is a battle drenched in symbolism. Father against son, shadow against light, destiny against choice. They fight across the vast chamber, sparks flying as blades crash, the Emperor's laughter echoing in the background. At first, the boy resists his anger, his strikes controlled, his movements measured. But Vader presses, relentless, his blade a wall of inevitability. And then, with a calculated cruelty, he threatens the boy's sister, suggesting she may be turned if the boy refuses. Rage ignites. The duel explodes into fury. The boy's strikes grow wild, his anger unchained, his blade hammering Vader backward. In a frenzy, he drives him to his knees, hacking away until he severs his father's hand, sparks erupting from wires where flesh once was. In that moment, the boy sees the truth. The mechanical stump mirrors his own, the destiny he nearly embraced. He stands over his fallen father, his blade raised for the killing blow. The Emperor's voice hisses with delight, urging him to strike, to fulfill his destiny. And then, silence. The boy's breathing slows. His eyes fall to his hand, then to his father's, and the fury drains away. With a sudden clarity, he extinguishes his blade and hurls it aside. His words ring out, defiant. He will not turn, he will not kill, he will be a Jedi, like his father before him. The Emperor's delight twists into fury. Lightning arcs from his fingers, a storm of power that engulfs the boy. He collapses, convulsing, his cries echoing in the vast chamber as blue bolts sear his flesh. The Emperor revels in the torment, pouring hatred into every crackle of energy, determined to destroy what he cannot corrupt. Vader watches in silence, torn between master and son, shadow and light. His breathing quickens, his head turns between them, and the conflict within him bursts into action. With a roar of effort, he seizes the Emperor, lightning scorching his armor as he lifts him high and casts him into the abyss. The explosion of energy consumes them both, the Emperor's scream vanishing into darkness. But the victory is not without cost. Vader collapses, his body broken, the lightning having torn through his systems. The boy rushes to him, desperate to save him, but his father knows the truth. His time is ended, yet his redemption is complete. With trembling hands, he asks to be unmasked, to see his son with his own eyes. The mask is lifted, and beneath the black armor is not a monster but a scarred, weary man. He looks on his son with pride and peace, his final words a blessing, his final breath a release. He dies not as Vader, but as Anakin, his humanity restored. Meanwhile, the tide shifts in the battle. On the forest moon, the rebels break through the bunker, destroying the generator in a blast that shakes the ground. In space, the shield vanishes, and the fleet surges forward, starfighters diving into the skeleton of the battle station itself. The Falcon, engines blazing, leads the charge, weaving through corridors of steel as explosions tear the structure apart. Fire engulfs the core, spreading outward in a chain reaction. The station collapses, a sun of fire erupting in space as Imperial ships scatter. The galaxy breathes again. The Empire's weapon is destroyed, its Emperor gone, its enforcer redeemed in death. On the forest moon, victory erupts in celebration. Fires blaze, drums beat, creatures sing, and rebels embrace. The smuggler and the princess, their love no longer hidden, share quiet smiles amid the joy. The towering companion roars in triumph, the droids clank and chirp, and children of the forest dance in delight. Yet amid the revelry, a solemn moment unfolds. The boy, burdened by grief, builds a pyre in the woods. Upon it lies the armor of the father he once fought, now burned away in flames that crackle into the night. Sparks rise into the sky, drifting toward the stars, carrying with them the weight of redemption. The boy watches in silence, his face lit by fire, his heart torn by loss and healing. As the night deepens, the celebration continues. But beyond the firelight, in the quiet spaces where the Force lingers, spirits appear. Old mentors stand, smiling with serenity, their presence a comfort. And among them, at peace, is the redeemed father, no longer cloaked in shadow but luminous in light. The boy smiles, his grief softened, his burden lifted. The story closes not with despair but with balance, loss and victory, grief and joy, shadow and light all entwined. In the final moments, the galaxy sings with hope. The Empire has fallen, the rebellion has triumphed, and the legacy of a father and son has been written in both fire and stars. Yet beneath the triumph lies the quiet reminder that darkness always waits, and that redemption, once found, must be cherished, for it comes at the greatest cost. Characters in this tale are not just pawns moving across the chessboard of war, they are living embodiments of themes, contradictions, and choices. Each figure, from the ones who wield sabers of light to the small creatures underestimated by all, carries within them echoes of the saga's beating heart. Their arcs do not merely advance the story, they reveal the truths at its center, that redemption is never too late, that love is both strength and weakness, that power tempts even the noble, and that victory is only meaningful when it preserves humanity. To understand the characters here is to grasp why this chapter resonates so deeply. At the heart of it all stands the young Jedi. He is transformed from the restless farm boy who once looked at twin suns into a man draped in black, his face shadowed by maturity and burden. His journey is no longer about adventure, it is about identity. When he strides into the palace of a crime lord, confident and commanding, we see both strength and danger. He exerts control, manipulates minds, and speaks with authority. His black robes mirror the ambiguity of his soul. Is he becoming the very thing he fights, or is he simply strong enough to walk near the abyss without falling? His duel with his father crystallizes this conflict. As rage surges through him, his strikes become wild, his fury consuming. And yet, in the moment when anger could claim him, he chooses restraint. His act of throwing away his weapon defines him more than any victory. Symbolically, he becomes a Jedi not by defeating his enemy, but by refusing to become one. His character arc is about choice, the choice to reject hatred, to embrace compassion, even in the face of despair. Opposite him is the Dark Enforcer, once a symbol of pure menace, now revealed as a man torn between duty and love, between servitude and redemption. Vader's presence still looms with power, his breath rattling through silence, his blade a terror. Yet cracks appear. His conversations with his son reveal hesitation, flickers of the man he once was. For so long, he has defined himself by failure to resist the dark side, failure to protect those he loved, failure to escape the chains of his master. But through his son's persistence, he sees possibility. His redemption is not easy or simple. It comes at the cost of sacrifice, the act of casting his master into the abyss. In doing so, he reclaims his name, his humanity. His final request, to look upon his son with his own eyes, strips away the mask, showing that beneath the armor is not a monster but a broken man who finally finds peace. His arc is the embodiment of the saga's core belief, that even in the darkest of places, light can be rediscovered. The Emperor is the opposite of this redemption. He is corruption given form, a figure who thrives not on brute strength but on manipulation and inevitability. His power lies in his ability to turn hope into despair, to tempt with whispers rather than commands. He represents what happens when the desire for control is fully embraced, when the hunger for power becomes the only identity. His throne room becomes a symbolic web, himself the spider at its center. Unlike Vader, he is irredeemable. His lightning is not just a weapon but a manifestation of cruelty, pain delivered as entertainment. His character exists to show the stakes, what the son could become if he fails, what the father already became and must escape. He is not complex in the way others are, but his simplicity is terrifying. He is evil unmasked, the darkness that waits at the end of surrender. The princess is no longer simply a leader shouting commands over battle plans. She is both warrior and woman, strength and vulnerability intertwined. Her role in the palace of the crime lord is one of risk and courage. Disguised as a bounty hunter, she infiltrates danger not with brute force but with cunning. Her liberation of the smuggler shows her loyalty and her refusal to abandon love. Yet her character is not reduced to romance. On the forest moon, she fights as fiercely as any soldier, her blaster firing, her determination unyielding. The revelation of her heritage deepens her arc. To discover she shares the same blood, the same potential for power, is both shocking and affirming. Her quiet acceptance reflects her strength. She does not collapse under the weight of destiny, but embraces it, her bond with her brother strengthened. Leia embodies resilience, the ability to lead, to love, to grieve, and to continue without faltering. The smuggler, once reluctant and selfish, now embodies transformation. In the first tale, he was a man ready to run, concerned with debts and freedom. By this chapter, he has chosen to stay, to lead, to risk himself not for profit but for loyalty. His rescue from carbonite could have been an end, a chance to escape once more, but instead, he recommits. His romance with Leia deepens, softening his edges, grounding him. Yet his charm and wit remain, his quips a shield against fear. As a leader on the forest moon, he proves his growth, commanding with confidence, strategizing with care. He represents the possibility of change, not dramatic destiny, but the quieter redemption of selfishness turning into sacrifice. The towering companion, Chewbacca, continues to embody loyalty in its purest form. His roars of fury and joy, his strength in battle, his unwavering presence at his friend's side, all reflect devotion. Yet even his character has nuance. In the palace, chained and imprisoned, he reflects vulnerability, reminding us that even the strongest can be broken. His liberation, his role in tearing through guards, his ferocity in battle. These moments reaffirm that loyalty is not passive but active, a force that shapes victories. He symbolizes the constancy of friendship, the strength found in bonds unshaken by fear or failure. The droids, often seen as comic relief, serve as more than mechanical companions. The Golden One, anxious and verbose, provides contrast to the gravity of war. His prattling reflects humanity's tendency toward worry, toward fear. The astromech, in contrast, is courage distilled into metal. Time and again, he carries the tools, the secrets, the bravery that turn battles. In the desert, it is his hidden saber that transforms execution into rebellion. Together, they are symbols of duality, fear and courage, doubt and determination, mirroring the internal struggles of their human counterparts. The Ewoks, at first glance, appear as simple creatures, their wooden weapons laughable against Imperial steel. Yet their role is essential. They embody the theme of underestimation, the idea that even the smallest, most overlooked can shift the tide of destiny. Their traps topple walkers, their persistence overwhelms trained soldiers. Symbolically, they represent nature rising against machine, innocence defeating arrogance. Their inclusion broadens the saga's theme. Victory does not belong only to warriors or chosen ones, but to all who resist oppression, no matter how small. The ensemble of rebellion leaders, the admiral guiding the fleet, the generals planning ground assaults, serve as the backbone of collective effort. Their presence emphasizes that victory is not the work of one hero but of many, united. They remind us that mythic tales require not only chosen figures but communities willing to fight together. Their courage, though less celebrated, is no less vital. Together, these characters form a tapestry of themes. The son's choice defines the belief in free will over destiny. The father's redemption shows the possibility of light even in shadow. The emperor represents corruption when power is absolute. The princess and smuggler embody resilience and transformation. The companions and droids reflect loyalty and balance. The Ewoks symbolize innocence rising against arrogance. Each arc complements the others, weaving a story not just of war but of humanity. What makes them endure is their imperfection. The son is tempted. The father is broken. The smuggler doubts. The princess grieves. Even the small creatures falter. Their greatness is not in flawlessness but in their ability to choose despite flaws. They stumble, they fail, they suffer, but they rise. That is why their arcs resonate, not because they are untouchable myths, but because they reflect the struggles within us. The saga of these characters reminds us that redemption is never too late, that choice defines us more than blood, that love is both strength and vulnerability, that loyalty sustains in despair, and that even the smallest voice can defy the greatest machine. In their arcs, we see not only a galaxy at war, but ourselves, our doubts, our hopes, our fears, and our potential for light. It is this reflection, embedded in their journeys, that transforms them from characters on a screen into legends etched in myth, carried in memory long after the story ends. Strange things always linger around films that go on to become myth. They are born not only of scripts and sets but of accidents, improvisations, odd choices, and the kind of behind-the-scenes chaos that never shows up in the finished story. With this chapter of the saga, the strangeness was everywhere, from casting choices that nearly rewrote iconic roles, to puppets that refused to behave, to creatures designed in the most bizarre ways, to crew members who risked life and limb in forests and deserts to capture the right shot. What looks seamless on the screen was often stitched together from strange coincidences, practical challenges, and risks that could have derailed everything. And those very strangenesses, like threads woven by accident into a tapestry, are part of what makes this film endure. One of the strangest truths begins with the title itself. Early on, George Lucas considered naming the film Revenge of the Jedi. Posters were even printed with that title, and some of them slipped into circulation before the change. But then came the realization, revenge is not a Jedi quality. Revenge is the path of the Sith, not the guardians of peace. To use that word would undermine the very philosophy at the saga's heart. And so, almost at the last minute, it was altered to Return of the Jedi. The oddity is that those early revenge posters, meant to be discarded, became some of the rarest collectibles in film history, strange relics of an alternate reality where Jedi embraced vengeance. The opening act in Jabba's palace carried its own share of peculiarities. The set was a fever dream, filled with grotesque creatures, dancers, and details that bordered on the absurd. Many of the monsters and aliens were designed quickly, cobbled together from leftover materials and puppetry experiments. One of the strangest was the Rancor, the monstrous beast lurking beneath the palace. Originally, the plan was to have a man in a rubber suit lumbering through a miniature set, a technique often used in monster films. But the result looked clumsy and laughable. Eventually, the Rancor became a puppet operated in miniature, filmed slowly and combined with clever camera angles. The odd part? The operator controlled the beast almost like a toy, moving it delicately in small increments, yet on screen it became a towering nightmare. Then there was Jabba himself. Bringing the crime lord to life required one of the most complex puppets of its era. Jabba was not a single figure but a collaboration of several puppeteers hidden inside and around the massive slug body. One controlled the eyes, another the mouth, another the arms, and still others the tail. Coordinating it required choreography more complicated than some of the battle sequences. And inside, the puppeteers were sweating, cramped, and barely able to breathe. One anecdote tells of how the stench inside Jabba grew unbearable after long days, a combination of heat, latex, and the puppeteers themselves. Yet despite the discomfort, Jabba came alive on screen, his grotesque movements and booming laughter convincing audiences that he was no puppet but a living tyrant. The desert shoot for the sail barge battle introduced its own strangeness. Filmed in the scorching heat of Arizona, the massive set was built out in the dunes, complete with sand pits and towering structures. The sail barge itself was an enormous construction, surrounded by scaffolding and hidden supports. For locals, it looked like an alien fortress rising from the earth. Security was tight, with guards patrolling the area to keep spoilers from leaking. But the desert winds had no respect for secrecy. Scripts and notes blew across the sands, sometimes picked up by curious fans who happened to live nearby. A strange dance of hiding and discovery played out, with the filmmakers trying to keep one of the most anticipated films in history under wraps while surrounded by prying eyes. The Sarlacc pit was another oddity. Originally envisioned as a simple hole with teeth, it was later redesigned to include a beak-like mouth and thrashing tentacles. In early versions, it looked far less menacing, just a hole with a carpet of spikes. George Lucas decided it wasn't terrifying enough, leading to alterations that gave it the grotesque, almost comical presence it now has. The weirdest part? Crew members joked about tossing in props and even food scraps between takes, imagining the Sarlacc as an endless garbage disposal beneath the sand. Moving away from the desert, the forest moon sequences carried their own brand of strangeness. Filming in the redwood forests of California, the crew faced both natural beauty and logistical nightmares. The trees were so enormous that traditional camera setups became useless. To capture the speeder bike chase, cameras were mounted on rigs that moved through the forest at slow speeds, just a few feet per second. Then, when the footage was played back at normal speed, it appeared as though the bikes were hurtling through the woods at incredible velocity. The strange thing is that the danger was real. Crew members nearly collided with trees, and even at low speeds, the rigs were difficult to control. What looks like a dizzying blur of trees on screen was, behind the scenes, a painstakingly slow process that demanded absolute precision. The Ewoks themselves embody some of the oddest facts of production. Originally, the idea was to use Wookiees, giant, towering creatures like Chewbacca. But Chewbacca had already been established as technologically adept, able to fly ships and repair machinery. Lucas wanted creatures who would represent the primitive, the underestimated. And so, Wookiees became Ewoks, shorter, fur-covered beings whose simplicity would contrast with the Empire's machines. The actors inside the costumes were often children or little people, enduring long hours in heavy fur suits under sweltering lights. Some of the Ewok costumes even had mechanical parts to move the eyes and mouths, though these often malfunctioned, leaving the actors struggling to see or breathe. The result was a blend of charm and oddity that gave the Ewoks their strange, enduring appeal. The celebration sequences with the Ewoks also carried unexpected strangeness. The drumming music played during their victory feast? The drums were implied to be stormtrooper helmets turned into instruments. On set, the helmets used were lightweight props, but the implication was macabre, celebration built literally on the remains of the enemy. It was a darkly humorous detail that many missed in the joy of the moment. Back in the stars, the space battle above the forest moon became one of the most complex visual effects achievements of its time. Hundreds of model ships were built, many only a few inches long, others large enough to fill tables. To capture the chaos of the battle, effects artists created motion control rigs that allowed cameras to sweep past the models as if they were moving at high speeds. The strangeness lay in the sheer scale. Every explosion was real, miniature pyrotechnics carefully set off on tiny models. One slip could destroy weeks of work. Yet the result was a battle so chaotic and thrilling that it remains a benchmark in visual effects history. The throne room sequence carried its own odd truths. The set itself was enormous, dominated by massive windows showing the space battle outside. But the actors were often performing against empty black screens, the battle added months later. For Mark Hamill, much of the performance required imagining what wasn't there: explosions, ships, the chaos of war, all while locked in an intimate duel with Vader and being taunted by the Emperor. The lightning that struck him was added later, of course, but the physical convulsions were real, Hamill throwing himself into agony without knowing how the final effect would look. The strangeness of acting against emptiness, trusting it would all come together, was part of the craft. Perhaps one of the strangest casting facts is tied to the Emperor himself. In The Empire Strikes Back, the Emperor was portrayed by a woman wearing prosthetics, with chimpanzee eyes superimposed, and voiced by another actor. By this film, Ian McDiarmid was cast, embodying both the physical and vocal presence. His performance was so chilling, so convincing, that many assumed he had always been the Emperor. The oddity is that one of the most iconic villains in cinema history was, at first, a cobbled-together experiment of prosthetics, animals, and voiceovers before finding his true form here. David Prowse, the man inside Vader's suit, also adds to the strangeness. As in previous films, his voice was dubbed over by James Earl Jones. But on set, he delivered every line himself, his thick accent and booming delivery often sounding nothing like the Vader audiences knew. For Hamill and others acting opposite him, it was surreal, the terrifying figure of Vader speaking in a completely different voice, only to be replaced months later in editing. The unmasking of Vader was another unusual challenge. The makeup team spent hours crafting the look of a man ravaged by both battle and corruption. The scars, the pallor, the weary eyes, all were designed to strip away the myth and reveal the human beneath. Sebastian Shaw, the actor chosen for this brief but monumental moment, filmed only a handful of scenes, yet his presence redefined the character. Oddly enough, Shaw also played the spirit of Anakin in the final celebration, his face glowing with peace. Decades later, this would be altered in special editions, replaced by Hayden Christensen, a decision that remains one of the strangest controversies in the saga's long history. Even the music carried peculiarities. John Williams, already a legend by this point, composed new themes that became instantly iconic. The Luke and Leia theme, tender and melancholic, was written with the knowledge of their revealed bond, a detail unknown in earlier chapters. For the Ewoks, he created the original Yub Nub celebration song, a quirky, almost comical chant that perfectly captured their innocence. Years later, this too would be replaced in special editions with a more sweeping orchestral piece. For those who grew up with the original, the sudden disappearance of Yub Nub remains one of the strangest absences, a reminder of how films can shift even after release. Stranger still was the secrecy around Vader's redemption. Scripts were deliberately altered, fake scenes written, to prevent leaks. Only a handful of people knew the true ending. Even some of the actors discovered details only when they saw the film in theaters. The paranoia of secrecy created its own odd atmosphere on set, where actors weren't always sure which lines were real and which were misdirections. And perhaps the strangest fact of all is how, despite all these oddities, malfunctioning puppets, dangerous forest rigs, sweltering costumes, title changes, and secrecy, the film emerged not as chaos but as myth. The strangeness became its strength, the imperfections its texture. Jabba's sweat-stinking puppet became an icon. Ewoks, mocked by some, became beloved by others. Forests slowed down to crawling speed became speeder chases that dazzled. Mistakes and improvisations became moments of legend. This is the enduring truth of the strangest facts, that cinema is not built on perfection but on the strange, the risky, the unpredictable. Out of rubber suits abandoned, puppets sweating, posters recalled, helmets turned into drums, and forests slowed into blur, a story was born that continues to define generations. And when we look back, these oddities are not distractions. They are the heartbeat behind the myth, the reminders that legends are crafted from the strangest of places. Stories that endure are never only about the images they show, but the meanings that lie beneath them. To walk back through the events of this film with a critical lens is to see how each scene, each choice, and each revelation was not simply a step in a narrative, but a stone in a mythic foundation. What unfolds is not only a tale of rebellion and war, but a meditation on redemption, on the nature of power, and on the fragile yet unbreakable threads of love and hope. Each event, when examined closely, reveals layers of resonance that ripple far beyond its immediate spectacle. The film begins with the rescue at Jabba's palace, and already, the critical significance of this sequence is immense. On the surface, it is an action-driven subplot, a daring mission to free Han Solo from captivity. Yet symbolically, the palace is a grotesque microcosm of tyranny. Jabba embodies corruption in its most primal form, not political like the Emperor, not tragic like Vader, but indulgent, disgusting, and cruel. His palace is a den of excess, where suffering becomes entertainment, and power is measured in chains and humiliation. Critically, the destruction of this palace represents more than the liberation of Han, it is the cleansing of decadence. Leia's act of strangling Jabba with the very chain that bound her is one of the most resonant moments of the saga. It is rebellion distilled into a single gesture, the oppressed using instruments of oppression to overthrow their captor. The sequence closes with flames and sand, a purification ritual that clears the slate before the larger cosmic conflicts ahead. This leads into the introduction of the new Death Star, and here we encounter the theme of repetition, one that critics have debated for decades. On one hand, the construction of another superweapon could be seen as redundant, a recycling of earlier threats. Yet from a critical perspective, this repetition is not laziness but commentary. The Empire's reliance on building greater and greater weapons mirrors the endless cycle of escalation in real-world power structures. It also reinforces the futility of domination by force. Each attempt to build ultimate control only reveals its own fragility. The skeletal design of the second Death Star, unfinished yet already terrifying, symbolizes incompletion at the heart of tyranny. It is powerful, yes, but also vulnerable, hollow, and defined by the very flaw that doomed its predecessor. The appearance of the Emperor in this story marks another critical turning point. Until now, he was a shadowy figure, distant and abstract. Here, his presence becomes visceral, and critics often emphasize how his role crystallizes the saga's core conflict. Unlike Vader, whose menace is tempered by tragedy, the Emperor is corruption unmasked. His demeanor, calm, manipulative, dripping with certainty, represents evil not as chaos but as order taken to the extreme. He does not rage, he whispers. He does not fight, he tempts. His throne room becomes a crucible of temptation, a stage designed to test not only Luke's resolve but the very philosophy of the Jedi. Critics often note that the Emperor's greatest weapon is not lightning but inevitability. He insists that events are already decided, that choice is illusion. The fact that Luke resists him, that Vader ultimately defies him, becomes a rejection of that determinism, a claim that destiny is shaped by compassion and choice, not by inevitability. Luke's return to Dagobah, though brief, is one of the film's most philosophically rich events. Yoda, now fading into death, embodies the theme of mortality and transition. Critics often point out how his death is quiet, almost unremarkable compared to the bombast of battles, yet its emotional resonance is immense. Yoda's departure is not defeat but acceptance, a reminder that even the greatest must pass, leaving their wisdom behind. His confirmation of Vader's identity as Luke's father and his revelation of another Skywalker deepen the themes of family and legacy. The critical perspective here often emphasizes the contrast between the Empire's obsession with bloodlines as tools of power and the Jedi's understanding of them as burdens of responsibility. Leia's connection to Luke is not just a plot twist, it is a symbol that hope does not rest on one savior but on shared destiny, on the bonds that tie siblings, friends, and communities together. The mission to Endor, and particularly the introduction of the Ewoks, has been the subject of endless debate among critics. To some, their inclusion is jarring, even juvenile, a tonal shift from the grandeur of myth to the playfulness of children's tales. Yet from another perspective, the Ewoks embody one of the film's most important themes, the power of the underestimated. The Empire, with all its technological might, is undone by creatures it dismisses as irrelevant. Their victory is not realistic in a military sense, but symbolic. It represents nature rising against machine, innocence prevailing against arrogance, community overwhelming domination. Critics who defend the Ewoks often highlight the thematic resonance. They remind us that wars are not always won by the strongest, but by the most united. Their primitive weapons toppling advanced walkers serves as a parable of resilience, echoing myths of small forces defeating giants. The capture of the rebels on Endor and the revelation of the Emperor's trap illustrate another critical dimension, the theme of false hope. The rebellion believes it is on the cusp of victory, striking at an unfinished weapon, only to discover they have been manipulated. The Emperor's plan is to let them believe in their triumph, so that their despair will be greater when it crumbles. Critics often analyze this as a reflection of real-world strategies of oppression, giving just enough hope to keep resistance alive, then crushing it to instill fear. Yet the rebellion's endurance, their refusal to surrender even when ambushed, underscores the theme of resilience. Hope may be fragile, but it cannot be extinguished. The space battle above Endor is not only one of the most spectacular sequences in cinema history, but also one of its most layered. Critics emphasize its dual symbolism, chaos and unity. On one hand, the swirling dogfights, the desperate maneuvers, and the explosions reflect the chaos of war. On the other, the coordination of countless ships, from massive cruisers to tiny fighters, embodies unity against tyranny. The destruction of the Death Star, carried out not by generals but by a smuggler and his allies, reinforces the theme that victory comes not from hierarchy but from collaboration. It is a collective triumph, not the work of a single hero. Yet all of this, grand as it is, pales beside the throne room. From a critical perspective, this sequence is the heart of the film, perhaps even of the saga. The duel between Luke and Vader is not merely physical but psychological. Each strike of the blade echoes with questions of identity, legacy, and temptation. Critics often point out how the choreography itself tells the story. Luke's initial control, Vader's steady dominance, the eruption of rage when Leia is threatened, and the frantic flurry of strikes that nearly ends in patricide. The severing of Vader's hand mirrors Luke's own wound, a visual metaphor that forces him to confront the truth. He is becoming what he hates. His choice to cast away his weapon is perhaps the most significant moment in the trilogy. From a critical lens, this act is the ultimate subversion of traditional hero narratives. Victory is not won through violence, but through refusal. Luke's heroism lies in restraint, in compassion, in his willingness to suffer rather than succumb. Vader's redemption is another cornerstone of critical discussion. For decades, audiences debated whether his final act, casting the Emperor into the abyss, was enough to redeem him after years of atrocities. Critics argue that the power of this moment lies not in erasing his sins but in reframing his legacy. Redemption here is not about undoing the past but about reclaiming humanity in the present. His request to see Luke with his own eyes strips away the mask that symbolized his monstrosity, revealing a broken, scarred man who dies not as Vader but as Anakin. From a thematic standpoint, his redemption embodies the belief that it is never too late to choose light, even at the edge of death. The destruction of the Death Star and the Empire's collapse are moments of catharsis, but the film refuses to end solely with triumph. The funeral pyre of Anakin Skywalker is one of the most haunting images of the saga. Critics often highlight its mythic resonance. It is both a farewell and a ritual of purification. Fire consumes the armor of Vader, transforming it from a symbol of terror into smoke drifting into the night. Luke's solitary vigil reflects grief, love, and closure. This moment grounds the victory in sorrow, reminding audiences that triumph is never without cost. The final celebration, with Ewoks dancing and rebels embracing, has been both cherished and mocked. Yet critically, it provides the necessary counterpoint to the pyre. The galaxy's liberation is not abstract. It is felt in joy, in community, in laughter. Critics often note the significance of the ghosts appearing to Luke, Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Anakin. This vision ties together the trilogy's themes of mentorship, loss, and redemption. It is a moment that suggests balance has been restored, at least for now. The saga began with absence, Luke's longing for guidance, Vader's fall from grace, and ends with presence, mentors watching in peace, a father restored to his son. In terms of reception, critics at the time were divided. Some saw the film as a triumphant conclusion, others as a step backward compared to the darker, more complex middle chapter. The Ewoks, in particular, became a point of contention, seen by some as too whimsical for the gravity of the narrative. Yet over time, critical perspectives have grown more appreciative. Many now see the Ewoks not as a flaw but as an essential part of the film's thematic mosaic. Likewise, the repetition of another Death Star, once criticized, is now understood as commentary on the futility of tyranny. The emotional resonance of the film lies in its balance of spectacle and intimacy. The vast battles thrill, but it is the quiet moments, the mask lifted, the weapon thrown aside, the pyre burning, that linger longest. Critics emphasize that the film succeeds not by topping its predecessors in scale but by grounding its mythic narrative in human truths. The pull of family, the possibility of redemption, the cost of compassion. Looking at the film as a whole, each significant event contributes to its legacy. Jabba's palace is decadence destroyed. The second Death Star is tyranny's hollow repetition. The Emperor is corruption incarnate. Yoda's death is mortality accepted. The Ewoks are innocence triumphant. The throne room is temptation resisted. Vader's sacrifice is redemption reclaimed. The pyre is grief acknowledged. The celebration is hope renewed. Together, they form not only the conclusion of a trilogy but a meditation on what it means to be human, to fall, to rise, to fail, to forgive. And perhaps this is why, despite debates and criticisms, the film endures. Its events are not only entertaining but resonant. They ask us to consider whether we too would throw away the blade, whether we too would see light in someone lost to shadow, whether we too could find joy in the smallest of victories. The film's true impact lies not in spaceships or sabers but in these questions, in the way it lingers in our hearts as more than a story, it becomes a reflection of ourselves. The making of this story was itself a saga, filled with triumphs, mistakes, improvisations, and flashes of genius that no script could have predicted. To see the finished film is to see a myth carved in stone. To look behind the curtain is to find something stranger and more human, a family of artists, technicians, and dreamers laboring in deserts, forests, and soundstages to create a galaxy far, far away. Their work was messy and exhausting, but it was also joyous, filled with strange anecdotes and bold choices that have become legendary in their own right. The production of this film was not just a technical achievement but an adventure that mirrored the story itself, full of danger, humor, setbacks, and unexpected victories. One of the most intriguing aspects of the production was the title itself. George Lucas originally planned to call the film Revenge of the Jedi. Marketing materials were produced, teaser posters printed, and promotional campaigns even launched under that title. Yet, at the 11th hour, Lucas reconsidered. Revenge, he realized, was antithetical to the Jedi way. The very word carried the scent of darkness, something belonging to the Sith. And so, the title was changed to Return of the Jedi, transforming the meaning of the story from vengeance to restoration. Posters that had already been distributed became instant rarities, treasured by collectors as artifacts of an alternate timeline. Even within the crew, the sudden shift sparked jokes. Costumers teased each other with revenge patches sewn into jackets, a quiet reminder of how fragile even the biggest choices could be. The film's opening act in Jabba's palace was one of the most ambitious sequences ever attempted in practical effects. The set was massive, sprawling across sound stages, filled with alien creatures, smoke, dancers, and puppets. The star of this grotesque carnival, Jabba the Hutt, was one of the most complex puppets ever built at the time. He required a small team of puppeteers to bring to life. One controlled the eyes, another the mouth, another the arms, and another the tail. The coordination was extraordinary, like conducting a symphony where every movement had to harmonize seamlessly. Inside the puppet, the conditions were unbearable, hot, cramped, and suffocating. One puppeteer joked that the stench inside Jabba was worse than the garbage compactor scene from the first film. And yet, when the cameras rolled, Jabba came alive. Slimy, arrogant, grotesque, and convincing enough to disgust audiences everywhere. The Rancor, Jabba's monstrous pet, had its own strange journey from concept to screen. Originally, the plan was to use a man in a rubber suit stomping through a miniature set. But when the footage came back, the effect looked absurd, more like a Saturday morning monster flick than a terrifying beast. After many failed attempts, the solution was found in stop-motion puppetry combined with clever camera tricks. The Rancor we see on screen is actually a puppet filmed in miniature, its slow movements later sped up to give it weight and menace. The strangeness of watching technicians bend over a small puppet, moving its limbs one frame at a time, contrasted sharply with the terror audiences felt when the creature appeared on screen. It was a reminder that monsters are born not in the wild but in workshops, built from latex, sweat, and imagination. The climax is echoed across the galaxy. In the forests, Ewoks celebrate victory as walkers burn. In space, starfighters streak through the skeleton of the station, fire erupting in blossoms of orange. The rebellion triumphs not only through strategy but through unity. Humans, aliens, creatures of nature, all bound together in defiance of oppression. And then, in its quietest moments, the story becomes myth. A funeral pyre burns, flames consuming the armor that once symbolized terror, transforming it into smoke that drifts into the night. Ghosts appear, not of haunting but of peace, old mentors watching, smiling, their presence reassuring that balance has been restored, at least for now. The story teases us with both resolution and uncertainty. The Empire is defeated, yet shadows always linger. Triumph is earned, but loss leaves its scars. Redemption is won, but at the cost of a life that can never be reclaimed. The cycle of rise and fall, of temptation and choice, has played itself out, leaving echoes for future generations. This is what makes the film linger. It is not just battles or spectacle, not just spaceships streaking through stars or creatures cheering in forests. It is the way it asks us to consider redemption, the way it shows that even the darkest figure can find light, the way it insists that choice defines us more than destiny. It teases future questions even as it closes a chapter, ensuring that its resonance will last long after the credits fade. So when you think back on this tale, remember the desert sun blazing over chains breaking, the fog of a swamp whispering of shadows within, the golden halls of betrayal, the infernal glow of a freezing chamber, the quiet horror of revelation, and finally, the pyre's flames lifting smoke into the night sky. These images are not just scenes, they are symbols, fragments of a myth that has burrowed into our collective imagination. And though this story may close with triumph, it leaves us with the reminder that victory is never simple, and redemption is never free. It asks us to feel the weight of failure, the fragility of hope, and the possibility of light even in the deepest shadow. Stay with us because this is what we do here. We journey into the layers of cinema, into the stories that define not only their characters but us. Subscribe now, and let's keep peeling back the mysteries, keep exploring the myths, keep finding the truths that linger in every frame. The rebellion song may end here, but our exploration is only beginning. The story opens with a shadow moving across the stars. A vessel drifts toward a world of desert and heat, a world that seems small and inconsequential, yet here lies the lair of a tyrant who rules not through armies or politics, but through fear and greed. In this grotesque palace, a crime lord lounges on cushions, his laughter shaking the walls as musicians play, slaves dance, and shadows writhe in corners filled with smoke and foul air. This place is less a home and more a den of decay, a symbol of indulgence that thrives in suffering. And here our heroes must go, not to conquer, but to rescue one of their own. The plan unfolds not in a single strike, but in pieces, like a mosaic whose picture only becomes clear when the last tile is laid. First come the droids, golden and blue, shuffling nervously into the palace as supposed gifts for the crime lord. Their small forms seem fragile in a hall filled with monsters and thieves, yet their role is essential. The golden one, ever anxious, babbles to anyone who will listen, while the smaller astromech rolls quietly, harboring secrets. They are not mere machines but pawns in a game that only a few understand. Then comes the princess, disguised in the armor of a bounty hunter. Her mask hides not only her face but her desperation, for within her grasp is the carbonite-encased figure of the smuggler. The slab is brought forth, and there he lies, eyes shut, expression frozen in pain, trapped between life and death. It is a haunting sight, one that symbolizes not only his captivity but the rebellion's fragility, a reminder that even heroes can be silenced. Under the cover of disguise, the princess claims him as bounty, yet in the dead of night, she returns to free him. The carbonite chamber hisses, the block shudders, and the smuggler collapses into her arms, weakened but alive. Their reunion is brief, tender, a glimpse of love reclaimed. But shadows move swiftly in this palace, and their moment is stolen as guards seize them both. The towering companion, loyal to the smuggler, is also captured, his great strength diminished beneath chains. The palace seems impenetrable, its master untouchable. Yet all of this is merely prelude. For when the young Jedi finally steps into the hall, dressed in black, his hood casting shadows across his face, the story shifts. He is no longer the uncertain farm boy of before, his presence carries weight, his voice calm, his hands steady. He speaks with confidence to the crime lord, demanding the release of his friends. But here lies the unease. Though his words are noble, his methods hint at something darker. He uses powers meant to influence minds, bending wills with ease, and though it works on the weak, the crime lord laughs at his arrogance. The line between light and shadow has never felt thinner. Their fates are sealed in chains and dragged into the burning desert. The sand stretches endlessly, shimmering under a merciless sun. In the distance, a pit yawns in the earth, a living maw with teeth like daggers, tentacles writhing hungrily, a beast that digests its prey for centuries. It is here that the crime lord intends to feed them, a spectacle to amuse his followers. On the deck of his sail barge, music plays, laughter echoes, and his monstrous body quivers in delight as the prisoners are forced to the edge. Yet in this moment of doom, the trap is reversed. The astromech, faithful and underestimated, launches the young Jedi's weapon into the air. The green blade ignites in a blaze of light, dazzling against the sun. Chains break, blasters fire, and chaos erupts. The towering companion roars, tearing through guards. The princess seizes her captor's chain and strangles him with the very tool he once used to enslave her. The smuggler, half blind and stumbling, still manages to land a strike that sends the bounty hunter crashing into the pit, his armor clattering as the sand beast consumes him. The crime lord's barge explodes in fire, his grotesque laughter silenced forever, and the heroes escape into the desert winds, scarred but free. The desert sequence is more than spectacle, it is cleansing. In fire and blood, the heroes cast off the chains of the past. The smuggler is restored, the princess vindicated, the companion unbound, and the young Jedi revealed as something more than apprentice. Yet even in triumph, questions linger. His calm, his control, his choice of attire, black robes and measured speech, suggest a path that could lead in either direction. He has grown, yes, but into what? While the desert sun burns, elsewhere in the galaxy another sun is blotted out by metal. Suspended above a forest moon, the Empire's new battle station takes form. Half-finished yet already operational, it is a skeleton of steel, a monstrous shadow that eclipses hope. The sail barge battle in the desert was another enormous undertaking. Filmed in the blazing Arizona sun, the set was so large that it drew curious locals who wondered if an alien fortress had been built in their backyard. The sail barge itself was a towering structure, surrounded by scaffolding, hidden by clever camera angles to appear as if it floated over the sands. The Sarlacc pit was a mechanical construct dug into the earth, its gaping maw lined with teeth and writhing tentacles. Originally, the pit was simply a hole with spikes, but Lucas decided it wasn't frightening enough, leading to the addition of a beak-like mouth in later versions. On set, the pit was the subject of endless jokes. Crew members tossed in soda cans, sandwich wrappers, and even leftover props, treating it as a desert trash bin when cameras weren't rolling. The forest moon of Endor brought the production into the towering redwoods of Northern California. Filming among trees hundreds of feet tall was both breathtaking and challenging. The scale was so immense that the crew often felt like Ewoks themselves, dwarfed by nature. To capture the thrilling speeder bike chase, an ingenious technique was used. Cameras were mounted on rigs that crept through the forest at slow speeds, just a few feet per second. When the footage was sped up in post-production, it created the illusion of bikes hurtling through the woods at breakneck velocity. The strangeness of the process contrasted with the intensity of the final scene. What looked terrifying on screen was, in reality, the slow crawl of a camera operator cautiously pushing equipment between ancient trees. The Ewoks themselves were a product of both necessity and whimsy. Originally, Lucas intended to use Wookiees as the primitive allies who helped topple the Empire. But Chewbacca had already been established as technologically savvy, undermining the idea of a primitive tribe. So Wookiees were cut down into Ewoks, smaller, fur-covered creatures whose innocence would contrast with Imperial machinery. Actors inside the suits endured long hours of discomfort. The fur was hot, the vision limited, and the mechanical faces often malfunctioned. Yet the result was both charming and controversial. Some fans loved the Ewoks' role as underdogs. Others dismissed them as a gimmick to sell toys. The crew, however, embraced the absurdity. Between takes, Ewoks lounged in folding chairs, sipping sodas and joking, creating the surreal sight of a furry warrior casually chatting with stormtroopers in full armor. The space battle above Endor was one of the most complex visual effects feats of its time. Hundreds of miniature ships were built, many just inches long, others large enough to dominate entire tables. Motion control cameras swooped past them on pre-programmed tracks, capturing angles that made them feel alive. Explosions were real, tiny pyrotechnics carefully set off on the models, filmed in slow motion to give them scale. The sheer scale of the work was staggering. Effects artists often describe the model shop as looking like a toy factory, with rows of X-Wings, TIE fighters, and Star Destroyers waiting for their moment on camera. One anecdote tells of how a technician accidentally knocked a model off a table, smashing it into pieces. Rather than panic, the team repurposed it into a shot of a ship exploding. In this production, mistakes often became opportunities. The throne room duel was equally demanding, though for different reasons. The set itself was vast, dominated by windows through which the space battle could later be composited. For Mark Hamill, much of the performance required imagination, reacting to explosions that weren't there, to lightning that would be added months later. The duel choreography was intense, requiring both Hamill and stunt performers to endure long hours of rehearsal. The lightsaber props were fragile, breaking frequently under the strain of combat. At one point, Hamill was struck in the hand hard enough to leave bruises, a strange foreshadowing of the injury his character suffers in the story. Yet the emotion of the duel transcended these difficulties. Hamill later described the sequence as exhausting but cathartic, the culmination of years of storytelling. The Emperor himself, portrayed by Ian McDiarmid, became one of the production's great surprises. At the time of casting, McDiarmid was a relatively unknown stage actor, chosen in part for his ability to embody both menace and frailty. The makeup process was grueling, requiring hours each day to create the Emperor's pallid, corrupted face. But McDiarmid's performance was so commanding, so chilling, that he transformed the character into one of cinema's most iconic villains. The strangeness lies in how completely he embraced the role. Crew members often remark that even between takes, he radiated an aura of sinister calm, unnerving everyone around him. The unmasking of Vader was another delicate moment. Sebastian Shaw, the actor chosen for the role, filmed only a handful of scenes, yet his presence redefined the character. The makeup team created scars and pale skin that suggested years of torment and decay. When his mask was lifted, audiences gasped, not at the monster revealed, but at the frail humanity beneath. Behind the scenes, the moment was strangely intimate. Shaw, Hamill, and the crew worked in near silence, aware of the weight of what they were creating. The surrealism of crafting myth out of latex and prosthetics was not lost on anyone. John Williams' score added another layer of magic. He composed new themes that became instantly iconic, from the tender Luke and Leia motif to the original celebratory Yub Nub song sung by the Ewoks. During recording sessions, the orchestra often erupted in laughter at the playful Ewok music, only to fall into hushed awe when the darker, more operatic themes thundered through the hall. Williams himself conducted with the intensity of a general, his baton carving through the air like a saber. The strangeness of recording playful chants and sinister marches in the same sessions reflected the film's tonal balance, light and dark, humor and tragedy. The secrecy surrounding the film was another fascinating aspect of its production. Scripts were tightly guarded, false pages distributed to throw off potential leaks. Even among the cast, many lines were altered or hidden to protect surprises. For instance, only a handful of people knew the truth of Vader's redemption and the Emperor's death. Others were fed misleading information, creating a strange atmosphere where actors weren't always sure which details were real. David Prowse, the man in the Vader suit, famously delivered dialogue that was entirely different from the lines later dubbed by James Earl Jones. For Mark Hamill, acting opposite Prowse's lines meant he was often reacting to words that would never make it into the final cut. The dissonance was strange, yet it preserved the secrecy that made the twists so powerful in theaters. Filming was not without its hazards. In the forests, crews battled ticks, mosquitoes, and treacherous terrain. In the deserts, heat stroke was a constant threat. On sound stages, smoke machines filled the air until eyes watered and throats burned. Yet through all these challenges, the crew persevered, driven by the sense that they were creating something extraordinary. Many later described the production as grueling but unforgettable, a strange family bound together by the shared dream of building a galaxy. Fun facts abound in smaller details. The Ewok language was cobbled together from snippets of Tibetan and Nepalese, improvised into a strange but believable tongue. Some of the creature designs in Jabba's palace were built from leftover parts of earlier productions, literally recycling cinema's detritus into new life. Carrie Fisher's iconic metal bikini was so uncomfortable that she often joked about plotting Jabba's death out of sheer spite. Harrison Ford, recovering from a back injury during shooting, performed many stunts anyway, refusing to let discomfort slow him down. Perhaps the greatest fun fact of all is how these fragments, puppets sweating in latex, forests filmed at crawling speed, Ewok suits overheating, posters printed with the wrong title, combined into something seamless. On screen, it is myth, smooth and eternal. Behind the scenes, it was chaos, strange decisions, accidents turned into triumphs. The production of this film, in its messiness and humanity, mirrored the rebellion it depicted, a group of individuals, flawed and exhausted, coming together to create something greater than themselves. And that is the true insight. Films like this are not born of perfection but of persistence. They are the sum of strange stories, odd mistakes, and moments of brilliance that emerge when humans push themselves beyond comfort to capture myth. The fun facts and production tales are not distractions from the legend, they are part of it. They remind us that behind every frame lies sweat, laughter, and improvisation, and that even the greatest of myths is built from the strangest of truths. The power of this story lies not only in its characters or its themes, but in the worlds that cradle them, the settings that breathe with as much life as any hero or villain. Each location is more than backdrop, it is a mirror of the story's emotional tone, a symbolic reflection of its themes, and a playground for the cinematography to shape mood and rhythm. From the grotesque dens of corruption to the sunlit sands of the desert, from ancient forests to cavernous throne rooms, the settings of this film transform myth into flesh. They anchor the fantastical in a reality that feels tactile, lived in, and deeply atmospheric. To explore these places is to see how the film built its resonance not just through words or battles, but through the visual language of cinema itself. The journey begins in the shadow of a crime lord's palace, a setting unlike anything seen before in the saga. Jabba's palace rises from the Tatooine desert like a fortress of excess, its exterior sun-bleached and austere, its interior decadent and grotesque. The cinematography emphasizes this dichotomy. Wide shots of the palace against the horizon remind us of the desolation outside, while inside, the camera lingers on grotesque details, alien mouths dripping with saliva, dancers bathed in red light, smoke curling lazily through the air. The setting itself conveys the tone of corruption. The palace is not a place of political tyranny like the Empire, but of moral decay, where power comes from indulgence and cruelty. Shadows dominate the interior, broken only by garish, colored lights that highlight the absurdity of its inhabitants. The atmosphere is suffocating, claustrophobic, setting the stage for the hero's first act of liberation. Within this palace lies another unforgettable setting, the Rancor Pit. A trapdoor drops prisoners into a cavernous dungeon, dimly lit, its walls damp and ancient. The cinematography shifts here, framing the heroes from low angles to emphasize their vulnerability, while the Rancor itself is shot from below to emphasize its towering menace. The spatial design is crucial. The pit is enclosed, inescapable, creating dread through confinement. When the beast is finally slain, the camera lingers not on celebration but on the Rancor keeper, weeping over his fallen creature. This strange, humanizing touch deepens the atmosphere, reminding us that even in grotesque settings, layers of emotion ripple beneath the surface. The desert outside, however, is the true stage for the palace's climax. The Sarlacc pit, carved into the sands, becomes one of the most symbolic settings of the saga. Surrounded by dunes, the pit itself is a gaping maw, its teeth sharp, its tentacles writhing, its stomach an eternal prison. The cinematography contrasts the endless blue of the sky with the darkness of the pit, creating a visual metaphor of freedom versus consumption. Wide shots show the heroes poised on the brink of doom, while close-ups capture the sweat and determination on their faces. The battle that erupts here is bathed in sunlight, a deliberate contrast to the shadowy interiors of the palace. It is liberation played out in brightness, the chain of slavery literally turned against the captor. The desert's vastness amplifies the stakes. There is nowhere to run, only victory or death. The setting transforms the battle into a ritual of purification, a cleansing fire before the deeper darkness to come. From the scorching desert, the story shifts to the cold steel of the Empire's new battle station. Unlike the first Death Star, which was a completed orb of menace, this one is skeletal, unfinished, its exposed framework revealing both its scale and its incompletion. The cinematography emphasizes this with shots that linger on jagged edges, half-built corridors, and open scaffolding stretching into space. It is power in the process of becoming, a monster still forming in the womb. Symbolically, the unfinished station mirrors the incompleteness of tyranny itself. It builds, destroys, and rebuilds, never satisfied, always hollow. The cavernous hangars, the endless hallways, the sterile command decks, all are shot with cold precision.